Hi again, everyone, and thank you for joining today's session, Driving College Readiness with Boot Camps, How Splendora Independent School District Built Momentum and Measurable Results. My name is Jordan Friedman. I'm a director here at Mastery Prep. We're excited to have you all join us today for a conversation with several school and district leaders from Splendora ISD in Texas. Before I pass it over to them to introduce themselves, I wanted to share a little background on Mastery Prep for those who may not be familiar. Mastery Prep was founded in 2013 and now partners with more than 3,000 schools and districts nationwide to deliver standards-aligned solutions that build student readiness for high-stakes tests, including the ACT, SAT, WorkKeys, TSIA2, and state end-of-course exams. Through live instruction, curriculum, practice testing, and adaptive online learning, Mastery Prep equips educators with the tools, data, and strategies needed to support stronger student outcomes and accountability goals. Throughout the webinar, if you have any questions for our speakers or myself, please be sure to put those into the chat, and we'll be answering those questions at the end of the webinar. And now I'm excited to pass it off to our folks from Splendora, who will introduce themselves. And Dr. Dietrich, I think we can start with you and go around the table.
Hi, thank you, Jordan. We are so fortunate for you, this opportunity to share all the things that we have done at Splendora ISD, and of course, our partnership with Mastery Prep. I am Dr. Christy Dietrich. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning at Splendora ISD.
Hi, good morning. I'm Bay Hill. I'm the Associate Principal of Splendora Early College High School.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lori Wright. I'm the Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning.
Good morning, you guys. I am Christina Martin. I teach 8th grade English language arts at Splendora Junior High.
Great. Thank you all so much for those introductions. And again, we're really glad to have you all here with us today. First, I wanted to provide a little context. Who is Splendora Independent School District? Dr. Dietrich, can you tell us a little bit about the district and also why and when you decided to partner with Mastery Prep in the first place? What problem were you really, or challenge were you really trying to solve?
Absolutely. So Splendora ISD is a 5A high school. We are north of Houston. In fact, if you leave Splendora 45 minutes south on 59, you will hit an Astros game. So that's kind of where we're located. We have about 5,700 students. Our high school, we are still a one high school district. It has about 1,600 students. And the reason why we partnered with Mastery Prep is we needed to do something different. I know, like many districts, we want our students to be confident and prepared to take college readiness assessments. The issue is sometimes getting them to the prep sites. And so we had Saturday prep, we have after school prep. We also have an embedded class period where students can get extra prep, but we just needed something different to really promote an atmosphere where students wanted to be a part of. And so that's when we reached out to Mastery Prep to figure out, is there something different that we can do? If you're looking at some of our challenges, some of your districts may be experiencing the same thing. TSIA2 is one of those areas where we wanted to see some improvement, particularly in math. Also in terms of PSAT, SAT, again, we just wanted, especially with the change from the previous platform to the digital platform, we knew that we needed a partner to help, not just with our students and understanding those changes, but also to help our staff understand those changes. And so Mastery Prep had a lot to offer in those areas.
That's great. Thank you, Christy. And now I wanted to move on to, what your partnership with Mastery Prep has looked like in practice. Obviously we know boot camp workshops were a big part of it all, but professional development and the Mastery Prep curriculum were as well. So can you speak a little bit about your early implementation of Mastery Prep, and then we'll kind of, circle back and do a deeper dive into the boot camp aspects?
Yeah, so we partnered with Mastery Prep in 3 different areas. One would be the TSIA2. We knew that, Many of our teachers had not taken the TSI, they weren't familiar with the TSI, and so we really needed to figure out how we could incorporate that within our actual curriculum. And so we did not only train our high school teachers, but we also trained our 8th grade teachers. So MasteryPrep provided professional development, workbooks, and then teachers got to plan to figure out how can we put this in. And we'll hear from one of our fantastic 8th grade ELAR teachers on how she was able to put this in place momentarily. We also used it for PSAT, SAT, and ACT prep. And I know that Ms. Hill will talk about how we built those boot camps in an environment where kids were excited to attend. And then lastly, we used MasteryPrep during summer school for our EOC camps. We wanted students to have something that they could focus on that was targeted more towards those high frequency TEKs and really shape where they needed to focus on for a boot camp that's only really 6 to 8 days, depending on the summer. So those are 3 areas that we used MasteryPrep for. In terms of our teachers, for many of them, it was the first time they realized, oh, this is a different type of test that our kids are being exposed to. And so how do I make sure that I incorporate that, whether it's through warm-ups, whether I do a mini boot camp, maybe I do rotations and stations. And so the teachers really gravitated to the training that MasteryPrep provided, and we were able to continue it on. So it wasn't just like they trained once and we were done. We were able to really create some experts within our district that were able to share those experiences within their content teams. Outside of that, lots of intervention opportunities that were just a little bit different. And I know that we'll hear about some of the boot camp instructors that we brought in. They were just excited to be in our district with our students, and our students felt that. And so I know that the teacher impact was also heavily shaped by our partnership.
Great. And Christina, do you want to tell us a little bit more about, the teacher perspective, the teacher impact of it all?
So we know teaching 8th graders how important it is as they go into high school, especially with Splendora High School being an early college high school, that they are ready for those dual credit classes and those college classes. So Dr. Dietrich suggested that our 8th grade team be trained with the MasteryPrep, and so we can bring that back to our campus and embed that into our curriculum. So I did some boot camps with Bay, Ms. Hill, and so I brought that back. We embedded that into our unit 2, our argumentative unit, so it kind of fit right in with the writing portion, and we just practiced on it. We had small groups, we did studios where we broke things down. We were able to see which students were getting it very quickly and which needed to have maybe a little bit more intervention, and we just kept using those materials over and over and using them in different ways, and we felt very successful with our students using those materials and having them better prepared.
Great. Thank you for that. And now I do want to move on to, what Splendora has really done in terms of boot camps, a bit of a deeper dive here. And for those who aren't aware, our boot camps are one-day strategy-focused readiness workshops that help students build the skills and strategies needed for success on high-stakes tests, usually held, in those final 4 to 6 weeks before test day. So yeah, can you tell us, why boot camps were so essential to your prep for various assessments here, and how are students grouped? And yeah, we can kind of go from there.
Would you like to start?
I can. So one of the things that we really started with our boot camps was making sure that we used our student data to create our instructional groups. And so when we started looking at grouping, Lori did some deep dives with our kids. She pulled their scores from College Board and really analyzed what they need, how many times they had attended boot camps. And from there we were able to hyper focus on students and areas that they truly needed. And so within the MasteryPrep, the special design of the work, it made it a whole lot easier to group those students. In addition to that, when looking at that, we held it in our meetings in the evenings. And so we just removed barriers from kids not being able to attend. So we work with our athletic department. We find our athletic bye weeks where there's not games going on. We recruit within our groups that usually are spending their evenings practicing, and then they each were signed up. They didn't have to go through the links to get them there. And so we were able just to make sure that they were accounted for and they had a space to be. And then looking as far as like just the alignment across levels, Lori would dive in and she would begin to, like I said, disaggregate data and be able to pull it apart and put kids where they needed to be. And so do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So the PSAT score reports is a very rich report that tells the students where those strengths and weaknesses are. So, and a lot of times when districts tend to have interventions and support sessions like this, it's very generic and surface level because you never know who's going to show up. But through our Google form and sign up sheets, plus collaborating with our fine arts and our athletic departments, we had an idea as to some of our students that were going to be able to attend. So to help front load that, I was able to download the score reports and then differentiate the sessions based on their abilities. So for example, we had several students that attended that night that scored about 1,000 on their PSAT or higher. So the conversation with them was the fact that you're already in line to earn your CCMR. So what we'd really like to do is set you at a differentiated session where you can start targeting those higher level scores to start earning scholarship money for your SAT. So we really had a very driven focus for those sessions to get those top tier strategies in to help them get above those marks. And then of course there was other sessions where students were scoring between, let's say, 700 and 1,000, and then that would be a different custom created session for those students on the math and the English portion. So we tried to be very purposeful and targeted. And while we were not only talking about testing strategies, but we were just talking about in general testing approaches when it comes to CCMR testing and what their goals should be. So it was like mini goal sessions that we had with them prior to starting those content sessions. It's very exciting.
One thing that I really liked that MasteryPrep did was when we would bring in we had outside trainers that would come in during a couple of our boot camps, and they would break down what the testing platform looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would spend time breaking down the modules, the high and low modules, and telling kids what they needed to be able to go in and do, to go from basic questions to those more advanced questions. And they connected with the kids. And I think that was what was important. We can talk about it all day long, but they see us all the time. So hearing from somebody else just made, it just made it even better. So I can appreciate that part, especially in making sure that our kids knew what to expect, especially in a digital platform. So
Jordan, if you don't mind, I would like to elaborate a little bit on the alignment across grade levels as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
in English, we know things align vertically. So everything's very succinct as far as the content alignment for TSI and the reading and writing portions. In math, it's a little bit different because we'll have freshmen that are sitting in Algebra 1, we'll have juniors sitting in Algebra 2, and sophomores in geometry. So they come with such mixed current course practice that they're doing in the regular classroom, which is why we tried to target a lot of those sessions based off of what they're seeing in class and then the other components that they'll be exposed to on those tests that they're not seeing on a daily basis. So we really tried to target and support each of the sessions catered to the students' current experience in their math classrooms, and then what they could be exposed to on the tests as well, especially when we talk about the ACT and how they have that science component. So that was a very fun special session that we offered there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. And we also did have a question come in while you were talking. So in what grade levels did you embed MasteryPrep, specifically the boot camps, at the high school level for the different assessments?
Fantastic question. So we embedded them in the 10th and 11th grade courses specifically for our Algebra 2 and geometry. There's different components for each of those courses that align beautifully with what they see on these tests. So we made sure to support the skills that are in those blueprints of those tests within the classroom and the curriculum that we're using there as well.
Great. Thank you for that. And yeah, just moving on to the next piece of this all. So two of the core components that we at Mastery Prep pride ourselves on when it comes to the boot camps are the flexibility and, the direct student engagement. And again, I know Splendora has really gone all in on turning these into, big community events and really, making them your own. So can you speak a little bit about, what the overall boot camp experience really looked like in the district? I know there was food involved, music, theme
Oh,
days.
Absolutely.
there's a whole drum line. All right, so we have two major events that are just probably everything that I love about it. In the spring or in the fall, we have pizza, pie, and PSAT, or for our juniors and below. And then we have pizza pie and ACT for our seniors. They're hosted on the same night, but Lori just helps make sure we have everybody in the rooms that they're supposed to be in. Our culinary department helps make sure that we have all the food to celebrate. And so we order pizza. And then, as you can see in the photos, our culinary department literally made pie. I want to say there was close to 60 pies that were made and shared among the kids that evening. And they have cute little pie symbols. That was fun. That cookie cutter had a whole bunch of conversations that went around with that. But we would start the event, and themes matter to me. I want to make sure that we are creating moments in time that they will keep and they will cherish, and it will just encourage that lifelong learning. And so we start the evenings off with a drum line. So as the kids are coming into the building, our drum line is outside. They come into the building. They are met by our teaching and learning department along with our teachers. They pick up their books. They pick up their materials. They go into the cafeteria. They meet with our trainers, and we start the night right there. We have music playing, there's pom-poms, there's a whole bunch of fun things that are going on, including photo booths. And so we make sure we take photos all night. Our amazing education foundations, they help make sure our kids are taken care of and that there's no barriers to any financial needs, and make sure that we're able to do that. So as we decorate and we make it the memorable experience, we create that environment that is not just a standard classroom. And so I think it's one of those fun evenings. And then we come to the spring and we have spaghetti and SAT, and that is just geared towards our juniors. And so that night looks a little bit different because we can't do it the same way both times. We have a spaghetti dinner complete with meatballs and garlic bread, and it is absolutely incredible. We have Italian music playing and checkered tablecloths. And as they're enjoying dinner together, we make sure that they are broke up into groups. We serve them dinner first at that one, and then they'll break into their small groups. They'll do their test prep session for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then we bring them back together with low lit lights, nice spread of Italian desserts. We're talking panna cotta, cannolis. Oh, and those kids, they have so many great conversations about cannolis. And then we take a bunch of photos. This year, we had thank you cards laid out for our education foundation, our sponsors of the event, a couple of different architecture firm that works with us, and they loved writing and leaving them their gratitude for it for the night. And so again, our culinary department takes full participation. We dress up. This is my favorite. We wear aprons, looks like Italian flag aprons, and we wear the fun little hats that go with it. Our kids get a real kick out of it. And like I said, we just celebrate. We share the pictures on Facebook, and make sure that we just continue to it's a good time, and we just continue to promote the excitement of learning. And these kids, I tell you, they encourage their friends to come to be a part of the event. And I think that's one of the best parts. It's like, hey, make sure you bring a friend, or we'll get an email late in the afternoon like, hey, I didn't sign up for it, but we wanted to come. Is it okay? And so we encourage that. And so it's really really great to be able to do that.
And Jordan, that's really how it started. We had Saturday prep, but no one is going to go to a Saturday prep when they have been up on a Friday night cheering, playing, attending a football game. And so Ms. Hill mentioned that we strategically place our fall event, Pizza Pie and PSAT, on a football bye week. And we get the buy-in of all of our coaches and our sponsors. Our football coaches are there. Our cheer sponsor is there. Our band directors are there. And so we hand them a ticket and we say, you have a spot. And that's really how it started. That's really how we've made this more of a tradition, an event that our students want to be a part of, because we honestly identified the right group. And we basically said, no, this is something that is for you. Here is your workbook. Here is a space where you truly can become confident in doing well on these assessments, where before they just didn't feel like test prep was for them because I'm not going to possibly go to college, or I'm not worried about scoring high enough. And so this really has become a moment where our kids place it with homecoming. They place it with senior sunset. It's one of those check mark boxes that we've been able to create.
It's really fun. When you walk in, you're walking into a gym and all of a sudden all these kids are practicing, whether it's volleyball, or you walk out into the training room where our athletes they're lifting weights and the coaches stop it and they pull them all in, and those little toot toots on a whistle, and then everybody stops and it's silent and he's like, all right, Dr. Dietrich is in the house and she's here to tell you about all of this. Or, all right, we're going to listen to Miss Hill and she's signing you up for this, but listen to what it is. And then we start talking about those advanced opportunities. Those kids start listening. They are student athletes, but they are students first. And now they are working towards that. And it's always exciting when that part happens. So
absolutely. In addition to that, guys, for our event night, spaghetti and SAT and pizza pie and PSAT, not only do they go home with full bellies and sessions that they have practiced and learned strategies on, but they all go home with a MasteryPrep book. We even had, I think our Education Foundation helped us with our bookmarks that had strategies and QR codes embedded on them. I think our Education Foundation also helped us with gift cards for the kids for showing up and participating. So it's a very well-rounded, full night of fun and learning.
Yeah, that's great. And definitely getting a little hungry hearing about the food aspect of it all, looking at these pictures here. I do want to move on to, some of the outcomes Splendora has seen. And when I ask this question, I usually like to look at it, from the qualitative perspective as well as the quantitative perspective. And I think we can kind of start with the former here. So can you tell me a little bit about, the impact that Mastery Prep, specifically the boot camps, has had, just on the culture and the mindset around test prep at Splendora?
Yeah, I think it's now attainable. Doing well on a college entrance, college readiness exam is something that they feel that they can accomplish now. And I think that's, we'll be starting year 3 next year. So we've had 2 years of these events and training, and we still have a lot of work to do. And so I know that we've got some scores and some data to share with you, but I think out of all of this, the attainability that our kids now feel is probably the most important shift in mindset.
This was a year. So as the associate of our early college, when we start talking about the students and they are building a pathway, they are not only trying to graduate high school, but they are working towards earning an associate's. And the way our calendar falls, 2 weeks before they earn their high school diploma. And so that college readiness is starting with 8th grade with the work that Miss Martin is doing at the junior high with her team. And we have students who are ready to come in their 9th grade year and are college ready in English. And so I think that was a huge game changer, because now not only are we attaining 6 college credit hours for our basics, our 9th grade year, by the time we are 10th graders, just in our fall semester alone, they're working on another 6 college credit hours. So by the time they make it to the end of their sophomore year, if they chose not to take college classes during the summer, they have, oh, 6, 12, 18 college credit hours. And I mean, it's pretty incredible, just for the potential to get to that 60 by the time they are a senior. And so looking at that early identification of students that are academically ready has been a game changer. And a lot of that work is happening at the junior high level.
I'm actually really glad Bay started talking about eighth grade because I was thinking about what Christy said about it's obtainable. I'm so excited personally, just because this did start 2 years ago and I wasn't even here then, but I'm happy to be a part of it now because those eighth graders from 2 years ago are about to roll up to be sophomores.
Yep.
And I'm super excited to see how that 2 years worth of impact are going to make impacts on our PSAT scores this next coming year, to see that they got that early exposure. They already started tackling some of the components on the TSIA in eighth grade. So to Bay's point, we've got so many more kids than what we used to have that are tackling these dual credit hours in and out of early college, high school, to be honest with you. So it's given our kids just a whole new vision on what is obtainable to them. And I've always been of the mindset, we don't close the doors in front of us for us. We're going to make sure that we maintain all doors open as much as possible. And they're starting to realize, oh my goodness, I never thought I could even do anything after high school, but I've already passed the writing piece. So I just need one other piece to continue traveling down that road. Let's see what happens.
And before they jump talking into just the implementation and the growth within our scores, we just did a round of TSI testing on campus, and the babies that we're talking about right now, my ninth graders, they're walking up and saying, hey, I just passed the other half of my English TSI. I need my course request changed. Can you make sure I'm in History 1301 next semester? And I would really like to take this in the summer. My counselor is over there going, yes, one more schedule change. I'm on it, baby. And so they are actively aware of where they are. And that's the part that, like, when we talk about like a culture shift, they know their present levels, they know what that goal is, and they are working extremely hard to make it there. And so I think giving that back and realizing that our kids they are in charge of their education, and they are working to make sure that they have literally, they are getting what they need to be successful and take that next step in their futures. That's really exciting.
Jordan, as a side effect, our parents are starting to reach out
Oh,
and
yes.
ask questions as well, because their kids are going home and saying, Mom, look what I could do. And I just passed this piece. So now the parents, as an amazing side effect, are starting to get more engaged and involved as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great to hear about, all the engagement from the broader school community. And I've seen some questions come in about, some of the quantitative increases you've seen as a result, of all this work you've been doing at Splendora. So I want to explore that a little bit, and, we could start with TSI2. So yeah, I guess kind of walk me through some of the data we see on the screen now.
Okay, so this is our eighth grade English data. I start my students out like in Meet the Teacher night, the very first night or week of school. And I tell my parents, I'm like, yeah, we're going to be taking the TSIA2 in January, and they're going to be college ready when they leave eighth grade. So the buy-in for the district, the whole culture, parents, we're in it. Everybody's in it. And I start, telling my eighth graders from the beginning of the school year, like, you'll be college ready. Everything's going to work out for you. We're going to work hard. We're going to get there. It's going to be easy. And we start just taking that MasteryPrep stuff and embedding all of that information we get into our daily activities, the strategies we use with our regular reading passages, the writing, we embed that into all of our essays that we write. So by the time they take the test, I feel like, and they are so confident with themselves that they just walk in there like, oh yeah, I got this. And in eighth grade, I also feel like it's a mind shift where they don't have so much pressure on them as they would when they were in high school to pass the test. So it's kind of like, let me just get in here and show out a little bit and prove to all my friends I can be college ready in eighth grade. And it's really worked for them. And I had a student just this week tell me that he was speaking with his cousins in high school and they hadn't passed the TSI, and he's already passed it. And he's only in eighth grade. So it really, their whole little mind shift in eighth grade, they're so ready for it. And so 2 years ago, before we started back in 2023, 2024, before we had the Mastery Prep and we were just sending them in there kind of cold, like, let's just see what happens. We had 9% passing. When we brought Mastery Prep in and we were trained with that material and we brought that back and started embedding that, that was in October. So we had about 3 months until they took it in January. And we just started using it really rigorously and every day doing something different. And so that second year, 2024, 25, after, well, the first year we had Mastery Prep, the passing rate for our 8th graders went up from 9% to 55%. And we continued to use that this year. We had a little bit more time to prepare, and all of our teachers are on board in 8th grade. We're all using it in our classrooms. And then our passing rate this year went from 55 to 60%. So we're sustaining that growth and that passing rate, and we're moving a little bit higher every year. So it's very exciting just seeing the kids grow and walk out of them, because, you know, they get the score instantly and they're just beaming and they're like, can I call my mom? Can I call my mom? And I'm like, yes, absolutely, go call your mom. So it's really fun and so rewarding. And I love that.
That's great. We actually had a comment come in that said outstanding growth. Congrats. So I second that. Congratulations. And on that note, I also wanted to take a look at some of the, SAT and ACT score gains you've had as well. So again, can you just kind of, walk me through the data we're seeing on the screen here?
Absolutely. So also, same year that we brought it in for TSIA, we did the same for SAT and ACT. So in 2025, that's when we started. And we have seen substantial growth. For SAT specifically, we nearly doubled our reading and exactly doubled our math scores just from being able to use that very rich content and supporting it and embedding it within our curriculums as well. On ACT specifically, we saw obviously significant gains over the first year of implementation, and we're continuing to make gradual gains after that. Math is always the hardest, as everybody knows. So those gains a little bit there have increased a little bit more so than the reading and the writing. And I have to give a huge shout out to our science portion of ACT. We actually had 2 students score perfect scores on the science session or science portion of ACT, and that's never happened before here. So
and those 2 students did attend the Mastery Prep ACT.
Sure did.
Yep.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that as well. And now as we wrap up the webinar, I'd like to hear a little bit more about, what's next for Splendora when it comes to just scaling what's working and just what you're envisioning, your partnership with Mastery Prep looking like, and, test prep more broadly at Splendora in the future.
Absolutely. So, we feel in Splendora ISD that life readiness is the ultimate goal for every teacher. And so this is definitely a mindset shift change. And when we approached 8th grade about taking the TSI, originally it was only students that had signed up for early college high school. And, that number may have been 40, 50 8th graders. And so, when I said, hey, we're going to assess all 8th graders, that why, understanding why this was necessary, was not there at first. And so I knew, like, if we're going to do this, if we're going to assess all students, then we need to make sure that they have a way to feel like they are prepared for this. And so Mastery Prep, bringing in that training, was instrumental. But what we saw was students for the very first time passing one or both parts of the TSI that did not sign up for early college high school. Now having a conversation with myself, Ms. Hill, you are college ready. Have you thought about joining this program? And so because of that, our numbers increased from when I first got here around 130 overall, all 4 grades, to now next year we'll have 560 students enrolled in early college high school. And so, screening all 8th graders, that is a huge part of that. And making sure that the why, understanding this is important because we want you to be life ready and we want to start early and prepare you early. So that way, by the time you graduate, you have accomplished that. That was a needed change. And so with that, moving into TSIA 2 math, I'm grateful for Ms. Wright knowing that, hey, we have to maybe streamline a plan for our 8th graders as well. coming out of Algebra 1 and making sure that they're able to be prepared and take. And so that's really a next step for us, is getting them the opportunity to do that prior to enrolling in high school. I know that when we do have an early college bridge camp over the summer, if students have been successful, we're seeing more and more of that with the TSIA2 writing and reading, they are prepared, but let's not just prepare those students. Let's see about all of our students. So that's something that we are currently working on as well. And then just, just sustaining that culture. Pizza pie and PSAT is not going away. Spaghetti and SAT is not going away. And so for us, just making sure that, hey, you already attended this last year, but this year you're actually going to take the PSAT National Merit Qualifying Test. So we're going to do something different for you, and making sure that students know that they are grouped appropriately, that we are putting them in the right sessions so they're getting the most impact. I mean, that's, where we want to make sure that we sustain that and that doesn't go away, because, if you didn't have a very good experience the first time, then you may not come back. So we know, like, it's a challenge for us to make sure that you do have an engaging, memorable time at these events, so you keep coming to get what you need.
Great. Thank you for that. And we just had another comment come in. Great job on the early attainment in eighth grade. So shout out to all the folks at Splendora there. Um, we do have some time for questions, and I did see a few come in. So let me pull that up real quick. And I think you touched on this to some degree during the webinar, but if there's anything you want to elaborate on here, can you tell us more about how you embedded TSIE2 resources into your classes? How did you create a scope and sequence alignment? If one of you want to take that
Really?
question.
I'd be happy to. Yes. For math specifically, because English, it's a lot easier to embed, and honestly, Ms. Martin could probably elaborate a little bit more on that as well. On math, it's a bit more of a challenge, obviously, because it's so course specific. So I take a look at the blueprint for each of the different assessments that we're trying to target. So, for example, if it's in the fall, we're obviously targeting PSAT because that's when our Pizza Pie PSAT event is. So then I take a look at the blueprint of the test itself to identify the skills and topics that are covered in either Algebra 1, and we align that to where it's appropriately falling in that scope and sequence and curriculum for the fall semester. If it's ACT for the fall for the seniors, then whatever math course that they're in, if it's something that's not, let's say, a DC course, because of course they're already college ready, but if it's like an AP pre-cal course, then we can try and embed maybe some time in which they've got supporting skills that's aligned more appropriately with the content that they're learning in that course. If it's geometry for the spring and the SAT, and they're working on, triangle congruencies or properties of special right triangles, things like that, I try to match the blueprint topics and skills with the course and where that is embedded within that curriculum. It's a lot of hands-on work, I'm not going to lie, but if it's purposeful, you only got to go through that identification process once, and then you're building the system for years to follow, which also help you custom create those sessions during our event nights that are catering to those topic skills. So we would have a geometry specific session for all the kids whose score report shows that that's one of their weaker areas. So we're able to build a system through that identification process and then funnel and continue growing the program off of that.
Great. Thank you, Lori. And one other that came in, which seems like it's a question for me. Do you offer your boot camps virtually in addition to the in-person sessions? Yes, we do offer online or virtual boot camps. Those are usually 4 hours in length, and the in-person boot camps are usually 6 hours long. And then for our EOC specific boot camps, those are typically 3 hours in length and usually focus on a single subject. And if you drop your email in the chat, I can be sure that we follow up and provide more information there. And I think that's really all the time we have for questions. Another big thank you to our friends at Splendora ISD for participating. Really, really grateful to hear your story and have you guys here with us today. I'm going to drop a few links in the chat as well for those interested in learning more about our bootcamp offerings. All right, you should have access to those links now. And just again, for A little bit more background. We offer boot camps for the ACT, SAT, TSIA2, and select end of course assessments, delivered online or in person by expert instructors. These are engaging events that focus on the most essential content, question types, and taking strategies, giving students a focused final push before test day without adding work for teachers. A quick reminder that we'll be sharing the webinar recording via email in the next few days for easy access. And in the meantime, you could feel free to visit our website, read our blog, or engage with us, on LinkedIn and social media to learn more about our offerings. And that's a wrap. Thanks again for joining and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.